we go to
See you,
at
brother.
various times. But I don't know if you guys want to speak and talk about. Yeah, Chris, you want to voice in? What do you say?
He's already on mute.
What's that?
He's on mute.
Oh, Chris, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Pat, can you hear me? Hey, Pat, can you hear me? That's a yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I just joined in. You talked about this morning. I just kind of, I was a little unprepared, but I'm, really glad to, I only know of Pete and pretty much always heard good stuff. I didn't do a lot of patient, so I just kind of figured I'd sit back and listen and just be a part of it. And like I said, I don't have a lot to add right now, but hopefully if we do this again, or we meet wherever we can, I'd like to get more involved.
The last minute kind of threw this together, and there was some technical issues, and then we're kind of hacking the softwares together. But we managed to pull together a nice little panel. Oh, am I over talk? Sorry about that, Chris. I think Chris is talking.
No,
Oh, he's not. Okay.
No, I wasn't talking back.
Oh, sorry about that.
What I do definitely agree with Brian, this whole thing with just people making their own categories and coming in for $400 and $500. I had the same issue Brian had with these people who have kind of ultimate background, who have self-appointed themselves a group of technical experts or whatever. And I mean, it's pretty obvious what they're doing, but it's certainly undercutting the whole stunt community and principal performers. They've just created their own category. We've seen this in the past with the car drivers that have tried to make their own little category, and now we're seeing it with the ESU. And some of these guys are very qualified and they'd make great technicians. I don't think we need 25 of them. At first they were just running, storming through the doors, and now, like Brian said, they're actually firing weapons, they're hitting the ground, they're taking direct orders from the directors and the ADs, and it just doesn't seem that you come in and make your own category, and then
I think
some of these problems, as Peter said.
It's a very good point, and it's becoming an epidemic all over the country. That sort of thing. It's not, it's in lots of categories. It started with technical advisors and drivers, as you say, and it's spread to a lot of other areas. One other thing that we're going to need to address at some stage is qualification for coordinators as well, because there's a lot of people coordinating, and Brian's laughing, but there's a as we all know, there's a lot of people potentially putting people at risk that are simply not qualified for the job. And we're dealing with vehicles, with fire, with explosions, with weapons, all these things. There's people rigging with no qualifications. It's the appalling thing in the movie industry is that if you're going to bring in a piece of equipment, you have to be qualified in any other division of the film business. And yet anyone that was a waiter yesterday can call themselves a stunt coordinator and can come and bring in a potentially fatal piece of equipment and put someone on it that's equally unqualified. In this modern day and age, that's absolutely absurd. It's ridiculous. There's no other profession in the world that you can tell someone to stand on a ram that's going to throw them up in the air with no knowledge of its mechanism or the process, and yet it's done all the time in the stunt business. Quite absurd. And it will take another incident like a sort of Midnight Rider thing, but where lots of people are killed or injured by, because at the times we've all heard, oh, it's just driving a car. And when I say to producers, do you know what the major cause of death is by accident in this country? It's cars. That's people just trying to get to work. We're not trying to do a stunt with them, and yet there's no qualifications for a coordinator to tell a stunt person or an actor to do anything on the set. And we need to. This is not necessary for this this avenue, but it's something that we as coordinators are going to need to address at some stage, because there is going to be a terrible accident on a major movie caused by inexperience and bad planning of a stunt, and it's going to happen. It's just a question of time. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I laughed not at what you were saying, Andy, but about what has happened in the past in New York. And there was last year, the FDNY came down and appointed certain people and said, listen, we want you guys to spearhead this whole fire class thing. And the community went absolutely ape shit. Like people that had no qualifications and had never done anything with fire at all wanted to be included in with the FDNY. Now, the people in New York that have coordinated fire for the past several years, you now have to sit down with the FDNY beforehand, fill out forms, and they said you need a permit to light a car on fire, but you don't need a permit to light a person on fire. So that has been their spearhead of initiating this permit thing. And when we did it, and Pat can tell you, there was people at his house going absolutely batshit about why wasn't I included? Now, the former head of the FDNY had been on sets for years and chose the people that he saw do burns. It wasn't like there wasn't other people that could do burns.
No, absolutely.
Those are the people that James, I forgot his last name, he's retired since. He said, these are the guys I've seen do it. And he goes, I'm going to have these guys spearhead this. Now, people went, okay, let me finish this thought and I'll jump in. People went nuts over it. There were people that have absolutely no credits as a stunt coordinator and people that had 1 or 2 years as a stunt coordinator, and they expected to be included. Now, if I had no experience in fixing cars, I wouldn't go up to the guys and tell them, hey, I want to be involved in this because I'm one of the people here. Not because I have experience in something to contribute, but because I just want to be involved. And people felt like it was, you were either in or out, and it was like you're just going to have to take the class like everybody else. Now, everybody had to get certified and is going to have to get certified. It was temporarily pushed away because there was bombings in New York. And they said, that's where our priorities are right now. We can't deal with the politics of this. But it's coming back, and when it does, everybody in New York that deals with fire, performs, coordinates, or sets up fire for safety will have to get certified.
And that's a very good thing. I think I'm all for that. I think and whether it's an older coordinator like myself, everyone should be perfectly available to go and sit for the qualification. You do for a driving test. You can't go to the DMV and say, well, I've driven for years, so just give me a license. It's something that's needed. Sorry,
I just have a question about this. You would talk about people creating their own categories and people who haven't any experience in stunts are now doing those things. Is this not an issue? Does this not speak to the lack of contract enforcement that is happening when these things go down on sets? Have any of you ever called to report it? And what do you hear when you do? Or is it all sort of a fait accompli and you can't really stop it at the moment? I'm just wondering what again, we're talking about the inefficiency of the union that we pay.
Well, they are SAG members.
Yeah.
But they're not stunt people.
No, they're not. Now, they've got this thing called a non-gun, which shoots a spark. And because it doesn't fire a blank, a background person can fire it without being a principal. Now, the producers and the ADs have found ways around everything. And what I was saying before was when the Screen Extras Guild was separate from the Screen Actors Guild, we were competing guilds for the same work. And we wouldn't allow this. Now that we're in the same guild and the same membership, SAG doesn't have a problem with it. It's their members doing it, but they're not stunt people.
I have to echo what Pete said, having been in the boardroom many, many times. This board is not friendly to the background community. They every legitimate request that the background community is asked for. I think Brian or Jeremy or Danny or Jeremy mentioned this earlier about people on the set not knowing the ADs and the PAs not knowing the answers to the questions. I mean, the background people are the only people who have a completely separate contract than the rest of us, and they're not even allowed a seat on the board. And when they ask to have representation or get these documents out to the set so the ADs know the answers to their questions, they're always thrown under the bus or sent to the back of the bus. Now that doesn't answer your issue, but I just think it speaks to the whole lack of efficiency of the union enforcing the contracts that it already has. Am I wrong about that?
Well, my disagreement with that is there is no violation of the contract.
No, there isn't. Exactly. It does not violate any contract. And sorry to cut in. I know you've been trying to talk, but the fact of the matter is, if a director who's never done action before goes to a coffee shop here in Hollywood and has the same waiter or waitress that waits on them every day, knows that they have a SAG card, he now has got a movie to do that has an action sequence in it, which might have explosions, a car crash, a fire, could have all sorts of things. There's nothing to stop that person saying to that waiter or waitress, you've got a SAG card, you can come along and be my stunt coordinator. And no one's breaking any rules. Is that not absurd? Of course it is. But it's not breaking any rules.
That's a great point.
Brian, as to what happened with the fire stuff, I mean, we did have a meeting over here, and I think it was, I think everybody would want to have a conversation about it. So it might have been the way that it was approached or whatever, how it kind of evolved. But I agree with you. I mean, I wouldn't, I'm a young coordinator. I wouldn't go and do a fire gag without having someone like you there. I haven't done enough fire work to actually feel safe about it, and to so I would bring someone in like yourself.
There's dozens of people that are not as ethical as you, and are gonna, it's the old thing of jumping out the window and think they're going to learn how to fall on the way down. It happens. I see people coordinating stunts that haven't got a clue, and I wouldn't want them to organize parking of a shopping cart, but they're out there doing stunts and putting other people. It's not only themselves that they're putting to risk; they're putting crew members and people to risk. It's a terrible thing, and we need to. This is, as I say, this is probably not for this venue, but it needs to be addressed at some stage, because we're the only organization that I know of that can access all these potentially life-threatening equipments and processes, and it can be done by someone that may know absolutely nothing about it.
Valid point. I mean, I think there should be a conversation. And what happens, or what seems to happen, is there is different groups that don't get along with other groups, and everybody's playing this like little internal political game, where it should be a huge conversation amongst the people that are actually doing something, and then have some kind of resolve. And as long as everybody has a voice, I mean, safety is a major part, but there's also, someone could be safe, but you have to have a background in being able to understand what's going on, whether it be fights, whether it be car stuff, whether it be fire, whatever it is. You got to be able to pull off the gag, and you have to be able to do it safely. And I think there should be a conversation, and maybe we could have, a community thing like this that can get more people speaking about the same thing, because I think everybody understands it. It's just that there's a pull from one team against another team, and then certain people are hiring these people because they're kissing this guy's ass and this guy's kissing this guy's ass. And I just keep saying, and when I had that meeting at my place here, so if we had everybody part of that, then what are you going to do? No one's going to get in a fight, It's just going to be like, you might argue, but no one's going to be throwing fists or whatever. It's like, we will have, at the end of the day, we argue, but then we come up with something that works,
So you don't want him there, really.
Yeah, right. May I interject real quick here, Pat?
Couple up there, we got Big Jeremy. Jeremy,
Sam's been really patient, and I think we keep stepping on him. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
yeah, Jeremy, come on, buddy.
Sorry, I was having technical issues. For some reason, my screen kept freezing over. But yeah, I think that there definitely does need to be a conversation amongst ourselves. And it would be helpful to get everyone involved and included in those discussions. With regards to fire and fire safety, yes, I do agree that there does need to be some type of education, because I personally haven't coordinated fire. So if I was to be on a set where I would have to do that, I would definitely bring on somebody that was knowledgeable in that aspect of the stunt. That's not something that I would just go off and do as a maverick and potentially get someone injured. You know?
That whole issue got initiated by a particular stunt being done at a live show in New York, and the FDNY saw it on TV, and there was no permit pulled for the fire. So they started calling around to see who did. They called me. I said, no, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't there. They said, well, who did it? I said, I don't know. I was not there. I don't know who did it. I don't know what happened. But the FDNY went off the deep end because the guy who did it, who ran the fire, who 5 years ago, 4 years ago at that point, was background, who all of a sudden got the book on how to do fire, went out and learned a bunch about fire. And he's not a bad fire guy. He's just very inexperienced. He doesn't understand, you know, how fire affects different things on the set. Would you use the same fuel inside of a car as you would out on a park in the daylight versus the dark? There's a lot of things he doesn't know yet. But he got a certificate from the FDNY and was the only guy in New York that I know of that had this certificate, that the FDNY knew of that had this certificate. And then he went and did a burn without a permit. The most qualified guy on paper in New York. That's when they flipped out. And you talk about different, you know, teams and different tribes. There's always going to be different cliques and tribes, Pat. The point is that everybody that was at that scenario, they didn't want anything to do with or see again. And that guy got suspended from the FDNY with that permit. I don't know for how long, but he did. So that was initiated by them, and they didn't put it out to the public. And when the FDNY has a piece of equipment they want to have built or customized for rescue, they don't put it out to everybody in the United States. They go to certain people and they go, we've had experience with you. We want you to handle this. So the conversation is not based on what the community wants. It's based on what the FDNY says they would like to see.
I don't know if the FDNY is, you know, sanctioning that, because it is happening, right? But I think it was more so the conversation, and Court was the one that kind of alerted everybody on it, and it you know, and I think we should get past that, because there definitely needs to be a conversation, and we need to go forward, you know. So, Danny, why don't you speak to it?
Yeah, all very, very valid points, and I thought about this, and like I said earlier, I think this is something that needs to be addressed from the ground level at the national level here, Robin. If we can get something going like in, I think, London, England, you know, why don't we have something like equity, where guys need to get certified in 7, 8 different specialty aspects before they can even be considered to do a stunt or even be considered to coordinate a show. You know, why don't we have something like that in place here? And I think that needs to change on the national level at the foundation, you know. But I have to leave soon here, group, but I just wanted to leave everyone with that thought, because I think it's very important.
It's absolutely what needs to happen. And my concern is we need to police it from within our ranks, because otherwise what will happen is there will be a terrible accident, and then it'll start being policed at a federal level, which will basically make making action movies very hard to do, because the stuff we do doesn't fit into normal criteria. So we need to address that ourselves, because you know, it's very tough now in England because of some accidents with ratchets and mechanical pulling devices on people. There was a couple of accidents, and since then, any apparatus that you use in a stunt has to be you have to have a workers safety guy there, you know, and often these guys are completely oblivious to what we're trying to do on a film. They're applying rules that apply to a factory assembly line. It doesn't work, and we really need to address these issues within our ranks in this country before there is a terrible accident, and then some federal body.
Yeah, Andy, that absolutely well said. I mean, from again, I'm kind of young in the coordinating thing, but from that meeting that we had, and there were 20-something people here, some, you know, more experienced than others, but you know, that's what came out of it. You know, policing ourselves, but also having, you know, a communication with the FDNY and whoever else it needs to know. But Danny made a really great point. This should be something that, you know, on a national level, we can get together as stunt people, stunt coordinators, or whatever, and it be a larger conversation, and that we can move forward, you know, where we're working together rather than all these little factions working against each other, because we wouldn't even have known about that. And court was gracious enough to say, hey, you know, guys, I just want to let you know this is what's going on, because it was just a group of people, a small group of people. And again, we'll get past that. But I mean, I think we should. And now that we have technology, I mean, not that this was, you know, any super feat, but we're kind of hacking the Facebook Live stuff, and we have some amazing people drop by. I've been like very, very impressed by Pete, especially today. I mean, he's just very fluent. He just knows. I was just very impressed. And you know, we had a lot of people dropping through, from Dean Devlin to many other coordinators, some actors, producers, and stuff like that. And that's just something that we came up with yesterday. I mean, we got this thing going yesterday. I know Andy, I think, got the call this morning. You know, Brian, I was on with you last night. Danny, I think, even this morning. Jeremy last night. So I mean, this came together really quick, and I think the numbers will show how important social media is, and how important it is to have a conversation, and then what results from it. So, I mean, I look up to, you know, Andy, I've been, you know, hearing so much about you over the years. Brian, you know, you're definitely probably the most hated guy in New York now. No, I mean, you're probably one of the more knowledgeable guys. You know, you're just awesome. I love your personality. I love your character. You've been around. I've seen you lit on fire. I've seen you doing some great stunt work. You know, Danny, I worked with you. You know, I worked with Danny with some fire. I mean, he was so safe. He had guys that have been doing it forever, and it was super, super safe. I remember working with Danny and being like, whoa, this guy is really doing it right. He's not going to, if you ask me, he's not going to say, I'm the fire guy, but he brought in fire guy. You know, he had fire guys there. And I'm just sitting there learning and going, oh shit, this is over my head. Like, man, I probably do need to take a course. You know, like, I want to get more into rigging. Am I a rigger? No, my father was an iron worker, so I know a little bit about rigging. But you know, I'm not a climber. But you know, you go and you take these classes, and you get together with people like yourself, Brian, or Andy, or you know, and you know, Chris. You know, the more you're around it, the more you learn. But yeah, if we have a conversation and when we become a little bit more
conversation, the thing that people are not really looking at is this stuff is all being enacted without any conversation. Like, we used to be able to hang people off of scissor lifts, lulls, or condors. We can't do that anymore. That was passed without one conversation with the community, not one. Now, we just tried to use a lull on Madam Secretary, the last episode, and CBS says, no, you can't even hang somebody off of a lull anymore.
Who passed that? How did that get passed without it going through you guys?
It has nothing to do with us. It has to do with I got to plug in my computer. It has to do with the owners of the
I hate to
equipment.
interject, but I got to sign off real quick. Thank you,
Danny.
Andy. Thank you.
Part of it, bro.
Thanks,
Sorry about the
guys.
last minute. Next time we'll give you 3 hours.
Thank you.
The owners of the equipment, Robin, have been sued along with the production companies and everybody else because the equipment is not designed for humans. So once it's used or misused, as they say, they become liable. So now they have sent out with all of the everything, you know, you get with him. Now, Andy's job on Spider-Man under the viaduct was the first job I ever worked on where I had to wear a class 3 harness with a yo-yo in a condor. We normally just wore a seat harness and clipped in. And, you know, they explained to me that the studio was really cracking down. This is one of the responsibilities. Now, with the owners of the condors and the lulls, they said you could not use these to hang, move. You can't even use a lull with a ratchet in New York anymore. It would, if it's a studio.
And
Now,
you think, and it's safe. It's safe to do so, but these guys are protecting themselves from any possible liability. Is that what they're doing?
yeah, and the it's transferred back to the studio if you do use it, and it's not a piece of equipment that is designed for human beings.
You know, and they also, the liability goes up with untrained people. So I was out. What's that?
And to your point as well, unlike the stunt community, a lot of the studio safety specialists all talked together, and they all came to these conclusions together, so that they would be pretty much on the same page as far as what equipment can and can't be used. And that goes back to what you were saying, is that we need to, as a community, we need to communicate with each other much more. You know, there still is this, you know, them and us situation all over the place, and it's one of the most destructive mechanisms in the stunt profession. And it's not just in the States, it's worldwide. There's always these groups. You know, perhaps it comes from a lot of type A personalities or whatever, but it's a very destructive form. You know, I'm part of a group that's been trying to get an Oscar category for coordinators for over 20 years. And one of the things that's destructive is very evident. You know, CGI artists and people that do visual effects were not even in existence really when we started to campaign for an Oscar for coordinating, and yet they now have a huge division, and we are still a sort of foundering, you know, a foundling sort of group of coordinators that still argue amongst themselves, and unless we can start talking more as a community, we'll never achieve any of these things. That's the biggest destructive force that's ever gone through the stunt community. It's a sort of epidemic worldwide that people, you know, this group doesn't talk to that group, and this people in this city don't talk to that city.
I totally.
Sign off here too soon, but this issue of communication is critical. Pat, I want to thank you for organizing this. I found out about it 40 minutes before it went up. So I'm really glad I was able to participate in it. And in spite of everybody in their cell phone all damn day long, you know, the lack of communication that exists within our community, I mean, by that I mean the union, is amazing. And so this is a great forum and a great beginning. And Annie, I think that this is exactly what needs to happen, is we now, especially now when we're coming up on elections, we have a chance to make a difference, to bring in a board that will actually listen to communication and share communication.
Absolutely.
And we need to, and we have to do it. So thank you for step one, at least for me, with the community here. And thank you for sharing all your thoughts. And you're just all so smart that it's very encouraging that you are wanting to participate like this. So thank you very much.
One quick question, Robin.
Yeah,
Does
sure.
background get to vote on elections?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so then they are a force that is controlling our guild.
Well, they're not controlling it, but
if you say that you will back them, they will vote for you versus somebody who will vote back the stunt community. That's the point I was making. That's all.
Well, yeah, I think I can't argue with that. I think most people, any group that believes that they have support somewhere is going to want to support the person that says they support them. What is the chief issue that you have with that? That it's just, is it an us versus them kind of thing, or is it if you want to get elected to an office in SAG, who are you going to make happy?
The bigger group or the smaller group? The bigger group. And there's more extras than there is stunt people.
Well, I'll tell you what, the current sitting board right now is not liked by the background community, and they were elected, we think, by the 17,800 people who voted in the last election. So if background could make such a sweeping change, they certainly didn't serve their own best interests in this last election. Things may be different in this next one, and I can't argue with your numbers and your premise.
Yeah, and I spoke with Brian last night about this, but I'll tell you, Pete was a background guy and understands it, and put out something for background people this past week, and it was very well accepted. And again, like Andy's talking about, the conversation has to happen. We got to be together, because we're in a very unique period in time where you don't have to go, show up at the town hall and we're all going to get together and we're going to talk. We can talk on the internet. We're doing things like this. You'll see the numbers. And the reason why, I know it was last second or whatever, and I got together with Pete and I go, let's just try this. Let's shake out the kinks. And that's all this was. It was to start the conversation, to say, hey, look what we can do, and then we can get better technically with this.
Really great start to do this. It's terrific.
Yes. And I just want to say one thing more, is that there is a gentleman who is, he's on the local board, I believe, and he represents the background. And I was at one meeting recently. He was talking about how there was a hugely unsafe thing being done on one of the major television shows. And he was calling for the proper community, the proper stunt people to be involved. So this was not what should be done. He wouldn't do what it was that they were asking. And so there is a voice of reason here. Safety is the most important thing on a set. And so there is someone in the background community who speaks with a voice of reason, and I think could be approached. And you know what, I'm going to have a conversation with him about this and see whatever information I can glean from him. And I'd be happy to share anything that I learn, or convey anything that you would like conveyed on that front, because
what I think would be important, if you could get it, is the exact wordage in the contract about what background can and cannot do without being considered principals, because that would help a coordinator come in and say, I told the AD, I said, I don't wrangle background. I'm a stunt coordinator. If there's no stunt people here, I'm going home. You wrangle it. You figure it out.
Okay, so that's the wording, is that I need to find out the contractual wording about what a background person can do without being considered a principal.
Correct.
Okay.
That'd be great.
I'll do my damnedest.
Thank you.
If I can jump in on this, in order to try to educate myself, I literally had that conversation Thursday with a SAG rep on set, and I said, is there something that defines what a background can or cannot do, something descriptive? And my answer was, I'd look into it, but it also was, no, there isn't. I was misinformed that the director couldn't directly instruct the background. Absolutely, in order to make my argument more valid in the future when I'm on set and they say, hey, here's your 5 BMS guys, they're going to be involved in a shootout. I wanted to know, at least, thank goodness, the one thing that saved us a lot in driving is the proximity camera, the rules. At least there's a defined rule there. So I said, hey, what makes a background a background? What are their limitations? And they said there really isn't written rule, but maybe you can find something a little deeper. I just called out somebody on the set of SAG rep and just said, hey, I wasn't very happy with the issue I had with the MS guy up on a rooftop in a harness firing a gun.
Hello. Yeah. Gee, why not?
A car stunt by water and have some guy that says, hey, I'm a good swimmer. You're going to want to have rescue diving. You're going to want to have the right people. So yeah, I think there's even, again, a conversation that we should put all the heads together and really, define exactly what it is.
I remember that there was a great hue and cry, I believe it was over Westworld, when background actors were being told, yes, well, you'll have to be naked and simulate sex, and it's all for your $75 a day or whatever it is that they're getting. And people just said, sure, I want the job, so I'll do it. So I know that the background was very upset at that sort of thing. I don't know.
Free every
if
night.
that
No,
means
yeah.
anything to anyone, but at least I know the background is aware of this. So I will definitely find that out, and I will get back to you. And I assume, may I get contact information via Pete to get this information back to you? Yeah. And Pat, just before I go, did you receive Cupid Hayes, who wasn't able to join in? I wish she had, because she's a wealth of knowledge.
Sure.
She said she sent the link to the petition of which we spoke earlier
Yeah.
to you already, and I wondered, do you know that you received it?
I did receive it, and then what I'll do is I'll edit it into this, and I'm going to cut it up and then post it so people can
And
see it.
that petition speaks to the pension and health issues that we all are facing and have faced over the last couple of years. Thank you, guys.
I'll review it with Pete to see what what he likes and what he doesn't like and what he thinks should be included, and then probably even run it by Brian Smyj too, because
Okay, great.
good fact checker.
Thank you all so very, very much. My,
I wanted to speak on Rob. You're good.
Okay,
I
take off.
appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning
just
in.
close the computer. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Again, I might just be naive. There's an insurance thing, but there's also like safety versus an excellent gag. So I was recently. You want to be safe, but
Listen, it's not about what we want, Pat. It's about what the producers want and what they're doing.
For instance,
And
I was
everything
out.
involves- It all starts with commercials, Pat. And I'm going to tell you right now that I've been told by producers and ADs on commercials, because that's where I started out, that they test things on commercials. And if it works on a commercial, it moves to TV and it moves to features. And one of the things they've been doing on commercials is, number one, hiring Teamsters to do stunt driving and putting them on camera. Number two, they have the PAs driving background cars on commercials. And three, this happened with riggers and nothing was done, that riggers were denied residuals based on the fact that they say they are not photographed. Now, even though your performance is in the final edit, the next step for this is going to be, and this is from a drunken producer friend of mine who will remain nameless, that when you do a car sequence in a movie and you have 300 stunt people and a massive driving sequence over a period of months on a movie, when the final edit comes out, they're going to have a bean counter go through and point out every car and go, who was in that car? Who was in that car? There's 55 cars on camera. We're not paying 300 sets of residuals. Tell us who the 55 people were driving their car. You're going to have to photograph yourself getting in your car in order to get residuals.
Yeah. Dude, I'm speaking to the same point that you're speaking to. I'm just saying, like, I was out a couple weeks ago, and believe it or not, but a producer, I was speaking to a producer, he said, I produced this movie, and you're a stunt guy, do you know so-and-so, whatever. He goes, I didn't know that you can't drive over, or you have to be under 5 miles an hour if someone's gonna jump out of a car. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. The stunt coordinator was telling us that you could only go 5 miles an hour. It was a law. And I was like, I never heard of that. And I might be just not knowing what the rules are or whatever. But so there's a situation where, is it a law that you can't go 5 miles an hour? I don't think so, but why would,
Is that on the way to work?
What's that?
Is that on the way to work or in the shot?
So I'm like, what? And the producer's going, I was saying, like, I'll have my mom do it. So the producer's going, shit, here goes my movie. They couldn't put that in the scene because it wasn't going to look good. It was going to look ridiculous. So where is something safe as opposed to where is a good gag going to be? You know, you want a excellent gag in your movie. So the producers are going, hey, look, if it just keeps getting watered down and all these younger guys are coming in that really don't have a background in athletics or stunts or whatever it is, it's like we need to have great stuntmen. You know, and when you work with like the Gilberts and you know, like and you various people, man, you're like, whoa, these guys know what's going on. Holy cow, you know, this is great. I want to be like them. At 51 years old, sometimes I get with people and I'm like, whoa, that guy is an amazing stunt man. Like that was a crazy stunt. That was awesome. You know, it gets your blood running. You don't. Oftentimes I go into a film now and I'm like, oh my god, like what is that? You know, it's so just cheese ball. You know, I want to see like, and I think producers want to see great gags, but then the insurance or they also want to see safety. So how do you kind of make sure? How do you walk that line?
Pat, I've had a conversation with the producer and I said to him, why is it that producers will hire the guy for less money when there's a chance of there being an accident? And you know what his answer was? He said, Brian, if I save the money on my above the line budget and there's no accident, score. If there's an accident, it still does not come out of my budget. It comes out of the insurance.
Yeah, I think some of that is hand in hand with the watering down process that has happened for stunt coordinators. You know, there's still you know, people that just perform and they think that the process of coordinating is just the guy that calls people to come in or makes the, you know, decides on the adjustments at the end of the day. Stunt coordinating should be a professional position and it should carry with it certain responsibilities and also certain authorities, so that if the coordinator of note on the picture or TV show or whatever says no, something can't be done, then it would become a big issue with the insurance company, with the production company. If someone went ahead and the director said, oh, well, I want to do it anyway, it would become a big problem. And I think part of our strength needs to come from our relationship with those insurance companies. We need to really make the insurance companies aware of a real coordinator's position and what the authority is, and they should be a lot more communication between those two entities, because the problem is you see a lot of coordinators on the set that don't have any authority, and they'll be told by the AD that, you know, they haven't got time for a safety meeting and all that sort of thing. I've seen that stuff go on, and it's ridiculous, and it shouldn't happen, but it comes from not empowering the coordinator. A coordinator should be empowered on the set to carry some authority. That if he says, no, you know what, the actor shouldn't drive this car up to camera because it's dangerous. You know, there was an incident recently on a movie here in Hollywood where Steve DiCastro was run over by an actor who should never have been at the controls of a car. He's an actor that's a known pill abuser and alcoholic, and should never have been moving the car. There was no need for it. It was at the end of the shot, and he literally ran over someone. Luckily, that DiCastro's a tough guy and survived, but he'll be out of work as a stuntman for a long time, and it's because of a lack of authority on the set, where the stunt coordinator should have said, no, you know, this guy, he shouldn't be driving a car, and he's certainly not going to be driving a car near these pedestrians. And
I think that's a great idea, Andy. I think having a relationship with the insurance companies, and the insurance companies, if something goes wrong, they just pull the insurance from the production, and that's it.
We need to develop that relationship also with those guys. I mean, the picture that Brian was saying about the Spiderman movie that we did in New York, you know, at first the safety guy from Sony we thought was a terrible pain in the ass, but he's actually become a tremendous asset, really, because he comes to us all the time now if there's something that he doesn't understand or he doesn't know he's heard about on a show. and he'll come and ask us, you know. So it's important to develop those relationships, because otherwise they're working blind and we're working blind, you know. And yeah, some of the rules could be too strict or whatever, but at least if we have a relationship with them, it will be a proper business-like. You know, it'll stop the people sort of just flying by the seat of their pants and doing stuff that they think looks okay.
I got Manny Severio, who's a stunt coordinator here in New York City. He says, I got a resume a couple months ago. Dude had 14 credits, all as a stunt coordinator, none as a performer. How can you coordinate with ever having performed in the first place? He started as a coordinator, never was a performer. How can that be, he says. Who's checking credentials?
Again, there's no rules. There's no rules about it. That goes back. That goes back to the director walking into the coffee shop and seeing the waitress that has he knows has a SAG card and has dealt him breakfast for the last 5 years, and saying, oh, you know, you've got a SAG card, you come and be the coordinator. And he's not breaking any rules, and she's not breaking any rules. How absurd is that? You know, she could be the next day, she could be organizing a car crash, someone on fire, and people running around with machine guns. It's absurd. It doesn't happen in any other profession.
I also think coordinators, you know, I mean, could be working with each other a lot more. Well, if you're not coordinating something, and then you're obviously maybe at that level where you could be working on, understand that. I mean, the argument is that from a lot of people that are running shows here.
Pat, that joke about the stuntman joke, how many stuntmen does it take to do it? A stunt, 10, 1 to do it, 9 to tell them how they would have done it better. I mean, it's a proverb, man. We're in a competitive type A, like Andy said.
We're cutting our own legs out, Brian.
But Pat, it has been that way forever. And unless something is initiated that they have to follow by insurance companies, by studios, outside of the realm, because it's just my personal opinion, is I don't think the stunt community has the ability to agree on whether something is white or black.
I think to a certain extent you're absolutely right, Brian. But I think we could go a good step in the right direction would be to form a guild or division of SAG or whatever that's a separate entity that is self-policing, that we let people in, and you can't coordinate unless and you wouldn't get an insurance certificate unless you're part of that guild. You know, a separate entity within SAG or within, you know, it needs to be something that is a self-policing, because we need to.
People start screaming they're being discriminated against because, I mean, there's initiations for the people that have no qualifications. They're being initiated and given the label stuntman. And I've only been on Facebook once, and it caused such a riot because I posted a thing about people should shut up, learn their craft, stop talking shit about I'm a stunt guy after they've done one fight scene. And, you know, and I made this statement, you can go back and look at the post. It was like every time I've been on set with you, Andy Gill, Jack Gill, you know, your brother, I learned something. I've been in the business almost 30 years, and I always have the ability to learn something. And so many people are walking in and they don't want to be able to say, I have nothing to learn. They want to be able to say, I know it all, man. There's nothing you can tell me. And this in itself.
Conversation is a little like, I agree with self-policing ourselves, being stronger, having the conversation, laying out some groundwork, but really.
How's that worked out so far, Pat?
It hasn't worked out too well, no, because.
So there's got to be another way to do it, like Andy's saying.
If it's a national conversation and you have some of the bigger, well-known stunt coordinators that are working big shows, and people start getting out of hand, then those guys are going to alienate themselves. So yeah, you know, we could police ourselves from the fire. I mean, sure, you got to bring in FDNY, but is FDNY going to know how to do, you know, a call on, you know?
They are in charge of any open flame. We are not.
But there's certain things that they have.
What people are not getting about that is we're playing in their park. They're not playing in our park. They're not coming to our park to say, hey, can we hang out with you guys? They're dictating the rules.
I get it. They should definitely be involved, and they should be
No,
a
they're
voice
not
in the
being involved.
conversation.
We're being involved. Everybody got that wrong. They made the rules.
Yeah, but when does an FDNY guy?
And lulls and condors dictated to us. We can't use them anymore. They dictated to us.
Just they should have a voice in the conversation, of course. But
No.
when there's a lot of stunt coordinators deal with putting people on fire or ratchets on, whatever, that they don't have any clue to. So it's
wrong, Pat. You're 100% wrong about that.
there's
These guys have
there's
been around in the fire unit, the bomb unit, for 40-something years. And they're on set. They're all guys that are explosives guys that are former sandhogs that know explosives. They know fire.
saying all of them, but I'm just saying there's a little bit of a difference, and that should be brought into the conversation. I'm saying they should have a seat at the table for sure. But
Pat,
police
you're not getting what goes on. You're not getting what I'm telling you.
saying
Our
is all I'm
table
saying.
is not where we have to go sit with them. We have to go sit at their table. They're not coming to our table.
That's fine. Whatever. I don't care. I'm not saying where the conversation.
You're both right. I think the reality is you're both really completely right. But I think where we need to go is the place that has the leverage is to go to all the studio safety people, so that you couldn't get signed off unless the stunt coordinator has at least reached some criteria, which we will have to decide on, but at least has some ability to do this stuff. And I think the key to that is the safety people at the studios and the insurance companies. That's the leverage that we need to say that, this, because it should come down to, even if a studio wants to use this coordinator because he's very cheap or whatever, they're not allowed to use that person, because they need to have someone that is approved by the insurance company and is approved by the safety people at the studio. And I think it'll have to be policed that way. And I think that eventually would then go hand in hand with the fire departments and with, weapons people.
The point I'm making, Pat, is that there are governing bodies already in power. OSHA, Cal OSHA, the FDNY. These are the organizations that are going to make the rules. Just like the city of New York made the rule that you can't go faster than 35 miles an hour anymore in New York in a driving sequence. Now, did the community have anything to say about that? No. That's a rule that was passed by a governing body that we have to abide by.
If we were already having conversations and had a rapport with them, we may have been included in the conversation, but we don't have a rapport.
No conversation, Pat.
We should start a conversation. That's all. I mean, it's all right. Brian.
All right. Pat,
I mean, look, I'm probably one of the least qualified people to be speaking about this. I'm kind of more bringing the conversation together, but that.
I'm trying to explain to you that the conversations that we want to have between ourselves are not going to change what the governing bodies want to do. Now, that Madam Secretary episode, when CBS said you can't use a lull, you have to get a crane. We brought in Bay Crane. Patty came in. It was going to be in a parking lot. Listen to this, Pat. In a parking lot, we were going to use a shipping container as a mock helicopter. The city said, no, you cannot hang a container over a city street. It's never done. It's not done. I said, wait a second. You do it every day when the sandhogs go down into the water tunnels. They said, we don't care. You still can't do it. The city said this. Patty was flipping out going, we do this all the time. So the conversation that we want to have is not between us and the community. It has to be between the governing bodies, and we have to go to them and kiss the ring, because that's how the system works, Pat.
I'm not saying otherwise. I'm just saying there has to be multiple conversations happening. First, as a stunt community, we have to get more together. As a union, probably you know, as a union, from background to producer, we have to have many conversations, and the more that we can talk with each other, the more inclined we are to work with each other in a reasonable way and to have a voice, you know. So
I agree with what you're both
Sorry,
saying, really. I mean, as I say, I think you're absolutely right, Brian. And I think the earlier part of that is, though, we need to, first of all, empower coordinators much more. And the only way to do that is to use leverage at the studio. And the way to do that is to deal with insurance companies. If a coordinator walked off a job and said, look, I don't think this is safe, if he had the authority with an insurance company and a safety person at the studio would say to the director or whoever's asking for that shot to be done, no, it can't be done, because if that guy walks off saying it's not safe, we will no longer have insurance coverage, and we'll know, you know, that the studio won't be responsible for it, and that would stop it. It has to be done from that level. I think that's the only way we're ever going to empower coordinators, because at the moment coordinators have zero power, and the power's gone down and down over the years until they're, you know, on shows you don't even know who the coordinator is. It's just the guy that they fill out that spot on the call sheet. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, you know, we have these scenarios where you have people, like you said, coming in from Starbucks, and everybody on the crew looks and goes, holy crap, that girl waited on me at Starbucks 2 weeks ago. Now she's a stunt coordinator. And all of a sudden,
do we give free coffees for life?
What we do. What's that?
Do we give free coffees for life?
Listen, why not? Why not? I mean, think about it. How many? I told you a story where one of the coordinators was driving home, and they called him and they said, you know, he's 3 hours away, and they said, listen, man, we're going to do that shot. It's just driving down the street. We're going to have the stand-in. Just do it. It's not a stunt. It's, you know. So the stand-in had been bugging them. He wanted to become a stunt guy. They gave him a stunt contract, and 2 days later, he was on IMDb as doing a stunt and as the stunt coordinator. So now with
I have a lot of people. Sorry, Brian. You want to finish up? I just want to get to some of these people asking questions.
IMDb is now posting precision driving credits. There is no category for precision driver, yet they're posting precision driving credits along with the stunt community. Now, again, you have that line blurred between extras and stunt people, which waters down what we do in everybody's eyes.
Anyway, we can go back to our conversation. Some people may pop in here on video.
I really think the power in that is for, you know, that we really got to encourage this relationship with studio safety people and the insurance companies that cover cover productions, because the only thing that is respected is if it costs money. And if suddenly the coordinator walked off a shot or said something that's not possible, and a director went ahead and shot it anyway, it would make that uninsurable. And that's the only thing I think that we've got as coverage. And I think, you know, to back into what we were talking earlier about, the way to do that is for a lot of qualified stunt coordinators to initiate relationships with those studios safety people. You know, like the one that Brian was talking about on Spiderman is John Clemens, and he's actually moved to you know, one of the Amazon or Netflix companies now. I think he's at Amazon, but he still calls from time to time if somebody's up for a job as a coordinator and asks me if I've heard of them. Do I think they've had that experience? You know, have they done that sort of thing before? And it's important, I think, that we have that relationship with those people, because that's where our power is going to come from. I really do believe that.
Agreed. Hey guys, I don't know if you guys want to keep talking. We can continue to
wrangle that, you know.
It's difficult. Absolutely, it's difficult. But I think it's a good start, though, if people like you, Brian, you know, initiate those conversations with those safety people. Just go and have a coffee with them, do whatever, you know, all the ones at the studio.
I talked to them all, Andy, and I was just down in Pittsburgh with Paul, Paul Jordan from NBC Universal, and we had the conversation about the fire class. I did a fire class last year, a 2-day thing. One day was completely classroom. The next day was performance, getting lit, the whole 9 yards. But he said to me that the studios would love to have some kind of criteria. And, you know, I've had people that are friends of mine that are attorneys said to me, this now becomes a legal thing.
And so it should. I think it's a good thing it becomes a legal thing, O'Brien. I really do, because I think it becomes a legal thing as soon as someone runs over a kid or something on set. It certainly becomes a legal thing, and I think it's important that we initiate those relationships like that. So I would you know, it's not an instant thing, but I think as much as you can encourage those conversations by people like you and those people, the better it will be, because that's we need to have that synergy with those people, because they're eventually, if they go to the studio and say, look, we feel that this is too dangerous to do, they have to listen to them or they won't get insurance. And it's important that they should be told if it's something too dangerous to do by someone like you that is looking at it and going, you know, this is ridiculous, we shouldn't do it.
Matt Anderson just came in with a text. He said that he was at SAG for a meeting and they had legal in there. They say that they haven't instituted some kind of rating system because they're worried about being sued. Do you know if any of that? What do you want to say to that, guys?
The polite way of saying it, it's a classic reaction of the paper tiger. Everyone's frightened of everything, but I mean, what they're in fear of being sued by that. But if an inexperienced people runs over an entire camera crew and kills them all, they're not worried about being sued about that. Quite absurd.
That's the old studio thing where, you know, all the producers want to claim the things that worked out, but don't want to claim the things that didn't work out. Absolutely. They won't open their mouth until it's later. So, I mean, what you were saying before about getting a group together, you know, and I mentioned this to Pat last night about getting together and starting a qualification seminar. And he said, well, how would you do that without, you know, this group being pissed? You rotate out the coordinators from every seminar. So nobody could say, hey, I was evaluated by this guy and he's a friend of that guy, and that's why he didn't sign off on me or whatever it is. And it's performance is all on video. Today we have that ability to keep everything. So if somebody says, you know, I mean, I've literally had people that I've seen in the business completely, totally shit the bed, go into a driving school and tell the people at the driving school, you guys will learn something from me today. I swear to you. And Andy, I won't bring up the name because it's a touchy subject, but when I posted the thing on Facebook, 70 or 80 people said that's a great idea. People should learn their craft. 2 people came at me with who do you think you are, King of New York? I said, I didn't tell anybody what they had to do. I said, if you want to use the title stunt man, you should actually learn what it is.
So Matt Anderson came back and said exactly what Andy said. So another question here, and we have a lot of people online. We got Manny Severio, we got Chris Place. I'm going to see if they pop into the video. Giordano Sabatini. What about an international guy, 22 years old, trying to get the SAG-AFTRA? Why this is so hard for foreign people, even living in Hollywood. Sorry about that.
You should ask Andy that question.
Yeah, that would be a good one for Andy when he gets back. Andy, you want to bring that back down so I can read it? Andy, here goes a question from Giordano Sabatini. What about an international guy, 22 years old, trying to get into SAG-AFTRA? why this is so hard for foreign people, even if I'm living in Hollywood.
You should get a job at Starbucks.
Yeah. What's the real question though? How hard is it for them to get in?
He's a foreigner. He's living in Hollywood. He's trying to get into the business, and he feels that it's even harder for him because he's a foreigner. You know.
I mean, you know, I don't. In all honesty, I don't think it's any harder if you're a foreigner. I mean, I don't think it matters where you come from. I think you have to, you know, you have to build a circle of acquaintances and get to know it. I mean, I think in actual fact, our business is pretty international. I mean, I obviously came from England and I've been here nearly 30 years, but you know, I think I was getting to know welcome. I think most people are. I don't think a lot of people care where someone comes
Potential as a, you know, if they're doing a figure skating movie and, you know, you're a guy that can figure skate that fits a certain body type or whatever, someone might notice you, and that's how you get in. I mean, that seems to be the old school way of getting in. You have a special talent. I got in through playing professional soccer. Everybody has their own little niche. I think Brian got in through Starbucks. Brian?
That's what we found in this Spiderman.
He was hanging around Starbucks giving free coffees out. I mean, that seems to be the new way of getting it.
We wanted to get him out of Starbucks. His coffee was so bad.
Dunkin' Donuts back when I started. There wasn't even a Starbucks. TV shows as legal credits. Okay, so Manny's actually answering some of the questions that are coming from some background and some other actors online. So just for me, you know, because I think this was amazing. You know, for the first time, I didn't expect this kind of turnout. I didn't expect this kind of communication. I thought there would be, you know, feedback problems. Obviously, moving forward, you know, headsets. We've kind of conquered a lot of the issues by muting our stuff. You know, earbuds. I know Jeremy Sample is up there with the earbuds and stuff, and that helps tremendously because he was the first guy on the call. So doing some, you know, rudimentary things technically, I think we can even get it much better. But our broadcast has reached a lot of people, and that's another great thing where we could have a bigger voice by people tuning in and caring. I mean, when I heard that there was only 16,000 people that vote for the president, that's not a lot when you're looking at 160,000 union members. So you're talking about 10%. If we get more involved and we speak intelligently and we get this conversation happening, we can do great things. I mean, honestly, this insurance thing is a great way. I mean, you can get some of these other big time coordinators together in a room, or, you know, make it a larger conversation with the stunt community, and we can get some things done. But I was talking more technically. What do you think we could do to make this better? Like, you know, as far as obviously more time before we go live. Take all this so that it can be posted, so whoever does
Yeah,
yeah, go
we
back
can
and reference what was talked about.
absolutely. So we'll take this. Maybe we even edit it. Maybe we even add some things to it. You know, like say.
Dunkin' Donuts part for me.
I think that's the highlight. What are you talking about?
He's going to airbrush you and I, Brian, make us look younger and taller and handsome.
Can you give me as much hair as Andy has, please?
We're gonna put a little fro on you.
I
like the
Unabomber look, man. What's with the?
Man, it separates me from the rest. So
I get given coins on the street. It's terrific.
I do like Brian's touch with the film canisters in the back. Was that Was that this morning?
Just for today, that wasn't up there normally. There's naked women up there normally.
Like that. I mean, I would hire you as a coordinator if I was producing
How
something.
about an inferior decorator?
Really good thing though, and it's you know, we need to encourage more people to get to, you know, to come on board and to say their bit without bitching and moaning about, you know, other groups or other cities or whatever it is, because that's what happens too much in our profession. It's, you know, it always comes down to them and us. You hear young stunt guys will come and say, you know, which service should I be with? Because you know, should I be with this one or that one? And I've been involved with iStunt from the beginning, but I always say to everybody, if you're really serious about working, join all of them. If you get one day's work out of it, you'll pay for all of those things. But the mentality is within the stunt community that if you're friends with this person or that group, you can't be friends with this and you have to do that. You know, that's the absurd thing that we need to try and squash within our business, because it's so detrimental. You know, I have people like Brian that we go east, we call Brian and his team and people that come and work with us. If it's somewhere else, we'll go somewhere else and use some of those people. And it's you know, they're all part of the same business. I never get this them and us. You know, if you're a member of this group, you can't talk to that group. It's so absurd, and that's one of the most destructive things in our business.
I agree with you. I mean, I remember, I mean, this was only a few years ago that, and maybe even, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago that I started New York Stunt Pros. Is because I wanted to create a conversation. So we weren't getting a lot of play on the East Coast. So the reason why I did that was to generate the numbers and the conversation to bring light to some of the great work that's been done. And the first year that we did it, we encouraged people to vote for East Coast Stunt Coordinator for, you know, TV show, and Court won an Emmy. So Court did a great job. There's a lot of great coordinators, but it was just like, okay, let's get more attention to New York, you know, because it seemed like California had a bigger conversation with different groups and stuff. But we got out there, we voted, we got more into, you know, supporting our brothers that were local, and
New York's been far better at it than the West Coast. You know, there's more sort of, you know, bitchiness between camps and things on the West Coast than there is in New York. You know?
Used to be, Andy. Now it's just as bad.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's a shame, because it's such a detrimental thing, and it helps no one. It just doesn't help anybody. You know, it should be, you know, it should be a one group thing. There'll always be, you know, there'll always be a few people you don't like or you don't want to work with or you don't think they're good or whatever. But it shouldn't be this camp situation where you have, you know, this group can't talk to that group and can't share equipment or won't rent equipment or whatever, you know. Or if you're with this answering service, you know, you shouldn't talk to people, you shouldn't hire people from the other one. It's so absurd, that sort of thing. You should be able to call from the biggest pot that you possibly can, because that's how you find the best people. And I've certainly made my career on hiring the best people for the job, regardless of, you know, where they came from, as long as they could understand it. You know, that's the key to it.
You actually hired Brian before? Huh. Interesting.
Hey, Pat, an idea about having these conversations. If you post that you're going to have them, maybe put up one subject a week or a month, whatever it is, and go, that's the only thing we're going to talk about this show.
Right.
Because so many of the conversations end up with, well, you know, when I did it, or what, and that's a very common thing because of the self-promotion in the business, which you get it, you have to do it. But, you know, when I did that, I did it, or when I did, and some of that conversation is going to be relevant to experience, if you say safety, whatever it is about safety, or getting producers and coordinators on board. Collectively pick out 10 coordinators and ask them if they want to be the head of that steering committee for the whole safety thing for the entire country. You know,
I mean, look, there's ability to get a larger conversation. It doesn't have to be,
yeah, but you can't start large. You got to start with a collective mind. Grab Andy. Andy, pick 10 people that you think are qualified.
I don't like
Grab,
them people.
well, I didn't say you had to like them.
Just kidding.
I think people even from the stream, Brian, you're showing that you can actually have a civilized conversation. I think people, you know, hear your name and they go, "This guy's," you know.
You would think that I was Johnny C and had beat people up. I never put my hands on anybody in 30 years.
I know, of course.
The most hated guy in New York title.
Brother, I mean, look, you're a character. You're very knowledgeable. So, you know, but I really feel there's a bigger conversation. What's that, Jeremy?
Brian made it through the call without yelling. That's a win.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wonderful thing. But I do think instead of it being exclusive groups, if you can afford to have, I mean, we have a lot of people that are tuned in here, and this was really haphazard, kind of thrown together, and it was just I wanted to basically show that these things can get done, and when you look at the numbers of how many people will come in when you see it at the end, you know, next week, and you see the reposted videos, and you look at all those people, you can show how powerful something like this can be, and
Absolutely.
and that's part of a bigger conversation. I want to, like Scott Wilder, Matt Anderson, Manny Severio, a lot of people, Roy Farfel, a lot of people are coming into this conversation. They're not up on the screen, but they're checking in. Everybody wants to have their little bit of an input. And then they feel, hey man, I'm part of this community. Once you start going to, okay, well it's, you know, Andy Armstrong and, you know, and Brian Smyj and you know, Peter Bacozzi, whoever it may be, people feel a little bit alienated, and you can of course say, okay, well these guys have been in it for 40 years and these guys have been in it for, you know, great. But everybody, even the guys that are retired, could have a voice, you know, and they should have a voice, and then those numbers mean something. And that's all that this is like pure numbers. I can tell you right now, not a lot of people can do what we're doing right now, technically. You know, it'll be common in the next year or two, maybe down the road. But right now, we're doing a little bit of hacking, some technical stuff. I happen to, you know, have some of the equipment that I'm able to make it happen. But the conversation and what we talk about, and then having a civilized conversation with knowledgeable people, you know, I'm not going to be really opening my mouth because I'm not as experienced as Brian nor Andy. You know, I'm doing it now only because I'm talking about the conversation, but I'm not talking about how to light someone on fire. You know,
when the fuck did you become the UN, for Christ's sake?
Bullshit. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm almost like when someone asks me, "What do you do?" I say, I'm an animator. It's hard for me to say a stunt guy because it's been the actual like stunt person has been so diminished, and there's people laughing at people, like I talk to producers like, oh my God, who are you guys letting into the business? I saw this guy, you know, he turned down this stunt, or a director threw this stunt guy off the set because he wasn't going to do this, or you know what I mean? It's like, what? I would die to like do something awesome.
Yeah, a lot of the business has definitely gone backwards, that's for sure. There's a lot of you know, there's still some tremendous people and some tremendous young people and new people coming into the business.
Absolutely.
But it on lots of levels, though, it has gone terribly backwards, and there are people that are called, you know, I guess that's always happened, that are calling themselves stunt people that have never, you know, you wouldn't let open the packet of Skittles unaided, you know. It's but I think these conversations go a long way to improving that, for sure.
No, I think it's great. So, I mean, we'll step it up next time. We'll get more people involved. I think people that are coming in, popping in, are letting us know that this has been a great, you know, cast. And I think, you know, back to Peter is just, I mean, I've known him for a long time. I've had a couple conversations with him, but the way that he showed himself today, I was very impressed. And you know, I think he would be a great president for our union. And you know, I hope it happens because he would be able to. He's someone that I don't think, you know, I think is going to represent us in a manner that would be, you know, advantageous. You know, what he was bringing up about the stocks and stuff, or our funds. I mean, what? This has been an amazing market for making money, and we're losing money. How's that happening?
Ridiculous. But I think the great thing about Pete is, you know, like him or not like him, he is honest. He's not sexist or racist, and he's not afraid to say what he feels. And I think that's what we need. You know, we need someone that's going to be upfront and not be frightened to be shouted at, and he's not.
Absolutely.
I need to go now.
Guys, yeah, let's Andy, I appreciate your time. Guys, you want to wrap it up? What do you think? Anybody have anything to say, or are you good?
Good seeing you.
We're good.
Take care.
All right, guys, thanks for everybody's input.
Later.
Later, Jeremy. Chris Barnes, how you doing, bro? Oh, man.
You done good at that.
I think it was fun. It's a good conversation. So, we'll try to figure out what the
It's
community.
interesting how, you know, got your stunts and stuff, trying to support Pete, but, you know, it's all a big effort, obviously.
Yeah. I was so impressed with what he was saying and how he said it. I mean, he just was like super smooth, and I think he's the guy that's going to stand on our side and not sell out. Because I just think, I don't know whether it be like people are taking money under the table, or, you know, I mean, obviously some of these guys on these boards are getting huge raises. Huge. They're giving themselves $60,000 extra for a year. You know, they can get a pension after 5 years of working for SAG. That, to me, I don't know. I mean, I don't know
You
enough.
gotta look at it this way. One of the things I was thinking when Pete was making this commitment to, you know, get involved, I thought, same way I think of Natasha and stuff, is how much work must they give up in order to do this? So I guess these people finally feel they get in these positions of authority, and then they try to compensate, I guess, by making up for it, you know, for the next couple of years. Because there's no doubt Pete's going to give up a huge portion of his stunt career and his acting career to commit himself to, you know, for the next whatever X amount of months to start this fight. So, I mean, I'm certainly not justifying it, but I guess they got to try to make it up somewhere, and that's what they do.
I mean, he's, you know, people like Pete, Natasha, Natasha's not getting paid. She's doing her thing because she wants to have a voice for the stunt community. And with that voice maybe comes, you know, some respect. So, I mean, I think Peter's saying, hey, go out and let's get some people running for some of this stuff. And I think, you know, we should be getting a lot of our stunt brothers and sisters out there, you know, running for some offices. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. I appreciate it. I consider this a huge success, and let's do it again. Awesome. Vote for Peter Antico. Rock and roll. Chris?
Hey, guys, just one thing. I think Pete said it best, and I love this comment, and obviously you can dig it up and get his quote. But, you know, he said, whether you like Pete or you don't like Pete, he goes, don't vote for Pete. He goes, vote for these issues that he's talking about. You know, it's not a popularity contest. It's some issues that need to be addressed. I think that was my favorite quote that he said. He said, whether you like me or not, don't vote for Pete, vote for the issues.
And you know, the guy was just so super smooth and so intelligent about the situation at hand. And also, I don't know how many people know that, you know, he has a speech impediment, but he was just so smooth. He has a past with Tourette's, and he is just somebody that, you know, has been an inspiration to so many people with disabilities and stuff, and he's overcome that over the years, and it's to the point where he's speaking and he seems like a freaking, you know, seasoned what do they call those the guys that go around the world speaking? What do they call it? National, what are they? Laureate or something like that. Anyway, he just was very super smooth with his delivery. So I thought that was pretty impressive, you know, coming from his background and what he's had to deal with over the years. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think we should wrap it up. And Chris, I appreciate your tuning in at the last minute, and I'll check you out, bro.
All right.
Later.
Thank you, man.
Yep.